Hi, everybody. Tim Hughes here. I'm the co-founder and CEO of DLA Ignite. I'm here to talk with Vimal. Today, we're going to be talking about how to use social media to improve customer experience in the travel industry. Vimal's a good friend of mine. And before we get started, Vimal, can you tell people where they can get hold of you?
Yeah, sure. I'm on LinkedIn. Search for me, Vimal Rai. My Twitter handle is FlyVry. Skype, Vimal Travel. I'm on Facebook. Search for me, Vimal Rai. I'm in Hong Kong. Email is vimal@dlaignite.com.
And Vimal is, because there's some people that are watching this where English it may be not their first language. So Vimal is Vimal, and
yes,
Rai
right.
is Rai.
Yes, that's right.
Cool. You've been involved in the travel industry for years. It's your bread and butter. And you're very passionate about it. I know. You've seen a lot of changes that have taken place in travel. So, what are the big issues at the moment within travel?
Well, I think it's a great way to start the discussion because there's two ways of looking at these things, right? So if you ask companies that are in structure and technology and this is really a result of the fact that the number of people who travel roughly doubles every 15 or 20 years, right? So it's actually very difficult for companies and even technology and infrastructure. It's very difficult to keep pace with the scale of the change and the transformation that's needed, right? So our expectations as customers, as travelers, keep rising, keep changing. Right. So it's actually quite difficult for companies to keep pace. And so what they typically end up focusing on is, they try to answer the biggest questions for themselves, right? How do we acquire more customers? How do we increase revenues? How do we process more bookings? How do we process more transactions more securely? How do we sell more things to more people? How do we authenticate identities at scale? How do we automate repeatable processes, particularly when, human resources is becoming such a high cost for everyone, right? And so they typically end up talking about all these things called hardware, right? And because all of these things are at scale, you end up looking at things like artificial intelligence, biometrics, blockchain. It's all about, larger numbers of transactions more efficiently at scale. Now, if you ask customers, though, it's a very different perspective, right? So if you ask you and me, it's something that I like to call hardware as opposed to hardware, right? So, there's more and more people traveling. As I said, there's like 1.5 billion people traveling annually, right? Low-cost carriers have made travel a lot more affordable. We all talk about you only live once, and there's a fear of missing out, and we all as customers have these desires for experiences. So we're taking shorter trips over the weekends. Travel is becoming a lot cheaper, a lot more commoditized. And I like to think of it as how we as travelers we seem to value experiences more than owning products now. We're looking for something that's unique instead of something that's just exclusive. We are looking at personalized things as opposed to universal commoditized things. So here's a great example of what I mean, right? If you look at annual global surveys done on customer experience, travel companies are pretty much rated an average of, just okay by consumers. So just okay means that you're an average business. It means you and all the other companies in your business are just about meeting your obligations to travelers. So, the businesses that really outperform are the ones that tend to be in entertainment, in media, and so on, right? Supermarket chains. So this is, the big challenge in travel today, to sum it up, is customers and businesses are not looking at the same things in terms of challenges. Customers want experiences. Businesses typically focus on hardware.
Right, on transactions, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So what's the difference between customer experience and customer service?
Yeah, it's great. That's a fantastic question, which actually a lot of businesses struggle with as well. So think of it this way, in very, very simple terms. Customer service is actually reactive.
Right.
Typically, it tends to be a set of processes and actions and tactics in response to an external stimuli. So a customer asks you something, requests for something, demands something, is willing to pay for something, and you provide the service in return. Experience, on the other hand, is something very different. It is an outcome. It is not what goes into, it's not a process, it is not tactics. It is extremely subjective because it is personal for every customer. And it's the result of, it's the outcome of the entire interaction that a traveler has with your business. And most importantly, experiences are basically memories, right? So, Tim, here's a test. Tell me, what was your experience like at the last restaurant that you went to for dinner?
My partner lost her mobile phone, so it was interesting trying to get it back. We ended up having to use Find My Phone to prove it was in the restaurant and stuff. So.
Okay, that's amazing. See, I asked you to tell me about your experience at dinner at a restaurant. You talked nothing about the dinner, nothing about the restaurant. I'm guessing it was fairly standard. You didn't talk to me about how they poured the wine, whether the cutlery was laid out properly, whether the waiter was, polite. I mean, all of these things are hygiene, right? So what you told me about was the highlight of the evening, and the highlight, unfortunately for you, was a negative thing where your partner lost the phone, right? And so neuroscience and neurosciences have actually proven that when we talk about experiences, our experiences are basically our memories of the peaks, the best experiences that we've had, the troughs, the worst experiences that we've had, and particularly the way a particular experience has ended for us, right? And there's a term for this. It's called the peak end theory, and I've spoken about it before. So when travel businesses are trying to deliver experiences as opposed to service, right? This is what they must do. They need to design for positive experiences, peaks, right? This becomes important. And so here's a tip for businesses, right? If you're trying to understand the difference between customer experience and customer service, if a particular service interaction with your customer hasn't gone well, or it's been more negative than positive, the one thing that you can do as a business to recover the situation is engage in some form of service recovery at the end, right? So in a restaurant scenario, free dessert, a complimentary glass of wine, words of commiseration, a discount off the menu, or something, right? A personal invitation to come back, something, anything that ends it off on a high note. That's what's going to recover the experience to a large extent for your customer.
But that has an impact on margin, surely, or I guess a glass of wine doesn't really have an impact on margin because the cost is low to the restaurant, but it's worth high to the client.
Well, yeah, it's about what it means to the client, because the client has had an experience, a negative experience that's either associated with your particular business, and in your case, having lost the phone had nothing to do with the restaurant, right? But can you imagine if the restaurant actually had told you, we're sorry you had that, I'm glad you found your phone, would you like to have a glass of wine? What are you going to do the next time, Tim? You're going to go back to that restaurant because you're going to remember that this restaurant commiserated with you, that this restaurant tried to make you feel like you were important, and they were there for you, right?
Yes, yeah.
And I think that's the point about experience.
So we've talked about the problems, and we've talked about the difference between customer experience and customer service. What has this got to do with social media, and how can social media help?
Oh my God, I've had this question from so many senior execs from travel brands. It's not funny anymore. So seriously,
I mean, social media. Come on, Vimal. Social media is just taking pictures of your lunch and cat photos, surely.
Yeah. So look, the problem we have today in most businesses, and this is not only in travel, right? We tend to operate in silos, right? So you've got, sales, you've got marketing, you've got operations, you've got customer service, and all of that. We kind of operate in silos, right? So marketing, advertisers gets leads, hands over to sales. Sales will disqualify most of the leads and hopefully sell a few, and then hand over to operations to execute, right? Operations plays by their own rule book, typically not written by the same guys who wrote the marketing copy or the advertising copy, right? And so lots of promises are made to customers, and this is precisely where there's a huge gap between what marketing and advertising has promised and what it has delivered, right? So Bain and Company did a survey where they asked about 360 organizations, which thought they were very customer centric, to rate themselves. Do you think you're delivering superior customer experience? And so great. So the leaders in those companies, 80% of them said, yes, we are delivering superior customer service. They asked the customers of those companies, and only 8% said that. So that's a huge gap, right? Huge gap of 80% versus 8%. It's in my industry, that's big enough to fly a 747 through, as we would say, right? So here's where I think, if you talk about where social media can help, this is how it is, right? Everyone is on social media. We've got to understand that your customers, your staff, your partners, everyone, right? 80%, there's lots of data out there, Tim, and you know this as well as I do. 83% of the internet-enabled world population is on social media, and they're all accessing it through their phones, right? So here's the thing you need to understand. It's an ecosystem and a platform where everybody is present. Your fans, your customers, your employees. You need to start getting your internal teams on social. You need to start getting them on the same page. You need to connect HR. You need to connect them to your customers. The key question is this: how can you use social media to your benefit as opposed to simply advertising on it, right? And particularly when it comes to customers, because you asked me, how can social media help? So I've got a couple of things to tell you how you can help, right? So the very first thing you can do with social media, you can connect with and listen to your customers, because everybody's on social media. Now, travel is a very high touch industry, right? Social media gives you an opportunity to touch your customers long before they actually arrive at the airport or fly on your airline or get on your train or whatever it is, right? Customer experience ultimately is about your customers. You can't do anything about the experience if you don't know what to improve and if you don't know your customers. So if you connect with your customers, you will understand that even before they tell you what their problems are, they will be telling their friends and their family. Then they will tell you what the problems are. So social media gives you a chance to come out in front of that. It allows you to connect to customers and talk to them and understand their concerns, their problems, and the impact that those problems are having on them, right? That's I think the very first way that social media can help. I think the second way social media can really help is something that a lot of businesses, not only travel businesses, struggle with, right? Customer acquisition and retention. Two of the biggest costs for any business today. There's lots of research out there that says it's 25 times more costly to gain a customer than to keep one. Loyal customers spend 30, 40, 70% more, and so on, right? When you operate social media as an integral part of your business, right, what you're doing is effectively reducing the emotional distance between your brand and your customers. And when you have greater brand proximity, affinity, using social media, what you're doing is you're engaging your current customers. You're making it cheaper to actually recruit new customers. Your brand is, top of mind for customers, and you're, sustainably differentiating yourself from your competitors, right? So that's it's a pretty good, use case for social media, I think, right? And perhaps the last thing or the last way that social media can help you, just extrapolating from the first two that I gave you. When you communicate to your customers, right, or to people who are just following your brand and have an affinity with your brand, when you communicate with them directly, socially, what you're effectively doing is bridging the gap between customer expectations and your execution. So instead of advertising and promising the world, like a lot of airlines tend to advertise first class and business class benefits and all of that.
But nobody looks at adverts anyway, do they?
Well, yeah, and even if they do, right? I mean, most people will say, well, guess what? 98% of people travel in economy, right? And so your advertisement doesn't really connect to most people. And so what you're effectively saying is, here's an advert for first in business, and everybody who's looking at it is saying, well, that's not for me. But when you use social media socially, right, what you're doing is you're actually telling stories, you're showing emotion, you're trying to be approachable, engaging in two-way communication, which is what social media allows you to do. This invites customers to buy into your journey, right, and join you as an advocate of your brand, right? people love human beings. People love stories. It's why we love listening to, to our cousins who have gone skydiving, who went climbing Machu Picchu, or who've visited Palm Atlantis in Dubai. Stories make stories make companies human, right? They make the business a little more relatable. And so when you're doing that, you're bridging that emotional gap with your customers, and you're allowing them to come that little bit closer to you. And so their expectations and your execution becomes a little closer together.
I think it's interesting you say that, because I think one of the worst things that ever happened in business was the website. And the reason for that is that we actually pushed customers away, and we actually said, talk to the hand or talk to the website. And what we did was that we lost the ability to actually have conversations with customers. Before websites, there was a lot more conversations going on. We probably had Salesforces, or there was far more people using the telephone and having conversations. And we basically said, it's all over there. Go and sort it out yourself. The thing is that I think that a lot of companies, though, would say that they were using social media. When I talk to HR departments, they say we're using social media, and what they mean is that they're actually putting job ads out on social. Yeah. It's a tactic. Yeah. They're using, we're using it for marketing, which is that they're taking the corporate message and they're putting it out on social media that then nobody reads. And what they forget is that if I fly, I actually start my flight starts a week before the flight starts, because I start thinking. So I'm actually going to Barcelona in 2 weeks, and I was thinking, and I've got to pack my bag. Yeah. So my flight actually starts. Am I going to take a big bag, or am I going to take a walk-on bag, and then I've got to check in and stuff. So then I've got to work out which terminal at Heathrow it is. So my journey starts way before I get on the plane. But also, what is that what do you say to people that are saying we're using social media and we're using it as a tactic, as part of all the other things that we do within customer experience?
Yeah, so I love your example, Tim, because clearly, a lot of travel businesses don't think of your travel journey the way you're exactly describing it, right? So in your case, it starts a week before. For some other person, it might start a day before or 3 days before. For some other people, it might be a month before, right? And here's the thing, we are using, when I say we, I mean travel businesses. A lot of travel businesses that I know are using social media today the same way that they use websites. So to your point, right? Social media has become effectively the third or the fourth channel. So after telephones, emails, and websites, it's become yet another platform for advertising and broadcasting.
We're the best in the world. We're number one. Here's our first-class experience. And I'm going like, exactly. All I need to know is what terminal I need to go to.
Yeah, exactly. So here's the thing, right? A lot of businesses make the mistake of focusing. So when you talk to them about social media, the brain focuses in on media, platform, free.
Tools.
Right? Tool, right. Whereas I'm saying, let's focus on the social.
Yeah.
Right. So when you're social, you're having conversations, you're interacting, right? You're not broadcasting, advertising, putting FAQs, and you're not talking at customers. You're talking to me, right? It's exactly the same thing as if you go to a bar for a drink, right? Do you walk into a bar and your regular bar? Do you promptly get up on a stool and start announcing to everyone, I am so and so, this is what I do, I'm fantastic at what I do,
and there's 30% off,
and there's a 30% off for my services? Is that what you do?
They're phone for security.
Yeah, you walk in, you look for your friends. If you don't have friends there, you make conversation, and you listen, and you ask people about what they do. You ask them what they do. You interact. You have conversations. You're social. That's what you need to do, right? And that's how you're gonna understand some of the most common concerns that your customers have. What typical questions do customers ask a week before, 5 days before, 3 days before? How can I build that into the conversation with you, right?
Yeah. So what do organizations need to do to start being social and not media?
Yeah. So there's two things that kind of amuse me every time I think about this, right? One is that every business seems to want to continue doing business the same way that they were doing in the past, and then expect different and better results. I don't get that.
Even
right?
though there's 3.7 billion people on social media.
Yeah, exactly. And then, you know, they want to keep advertising, and they want to keep doing, you know, putting out white papers and distributing emails and going on social media and advertising and all of that. You know, more and more people around the world are now using ad blockers, right?
Yeah.
As much as we know that social media advertising is rife with fraud. There was something I read the other day that was, 70 to 80% of the money is just going down the drain.
Yeah.
Let me give you an example that will kind of answer this question as to what you need to do as a strategy, right? So, you know, there's one of the world's most famous low-cost carriers, AirAsia. They've got about, when I checked, about 800 over 1,000 followers on Instagram.
Yeah.
Every post that they make, which is basically an advert of some sort, gets roughly, 0.5 to 1% of engagement. So between 4,000 to 8,000 likes, which is not bad, right? I mean, 8,000 likes is pretty decent, right? But remember, they've got 850,000 people who follow them, right? Forget about comments, because comments are, a third of the likes, right? So it's pretty bad in terms of engagement. Now, if you look at the founder of AirAsia, and that's Tony Fernandez, right? He has, maybe 30% the number of followers. So he's got about, I don't know, maybe 200, 300,000 followers. But he gets about 3% engagement on each one of his posts. 3%. That's 3 times the engagement of his airline, right? So he's got fewer followers, but much, much higher engagement. And that's because he tells stories. If you go look at what he does on Instagram, on Twitter, he tells stories, right? So you have to ask yourself why. Companies need to start understanding that the answer is this. If you ask me what the difference in your strategy needs to be, it is that you have to understand that people, your customers, engage with other people. People believe and trust in other people. They may say they trust your brand. They may fly you. They may buy your tickets. They may come to your airport. They may use your services. But the real connection happens with another human being, not with logo, not with a brand, not with a building, not with hardware, not with technology, right? And this is precisely why influencers have had their day. Influencers have been doing so well in the last 10 years because they're people like you and I. They have large followings. Every time they say something, they sell tens of thousands of the product because they come across as believable, approachable. I mean, that's another story.
It's okay. Influencers is generally still paid media. It's still advertising.
Sure,
the thing about
in their heyday, Tim, influencers did well because they came across as believable people like you and I.
Yes.
Today it's become something else altogether, right?
Yes, because I think people realize it's an advert.
Correct.
If you go to an opening of a film and it says Vim or I, and he's wearing a Louis Vuitton shirt and stuff like that, it's that's advertising, and influencer marketing is very similar to that. But to your point, people are far more interested in the individual. I wrote an article recently about the footballer Ronaldo. He has 4 times as many followers as Real Madrid, because people follow Real Madrid because it's kind of like a if there's a particular offer on some tickets that you need to get hold of, you'll get them, but you're not actually interested in the brand. You might be interested in the brand because you support them, but what they're doing is that they're providing you a transaction to get the experience. And I think a lot of people talk about it's the brand. It's not. It's actually about the individuals. You're only unique today because there's lots of low-cost airlines. You're only unique today as the people.
Yeah. Very true. Very true.
What should companies really do, and how can they effectively put strategy together for social media?
Well, first thing you need to do is have a chat with me, right?
Bring Vim on.
I'll
have Vim on speed dial.
Yeah, exactly. So I'll get into your social feeds. I'll do a proper audit for you. I'll tell you the good, the bad, of ugly, and what's happening. Look, jokes aside, I'll work with you to put a plan for social media in place for your brand, right? With the overall objective of improving the customer experience that you're delivering. But I think this is a good point for me to a good segue for me to start talking about, some of the tips that I have. So I've got 5 tips for all our listeners today, and I'll start with the very first one, right? So I think we've established that social media is about social. So I think the very first tip here is this: give your customers and your employees a real voice, right? Not a fake one, a real one. Empower them, right? So too often when I talk to brands, and I've had discussions with some of the biggest entertainment brands, right? They're scared to give customers an opportunity to interact. So I know an airline, for example, that blocks comments on their Facebook feed.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, what's the point of that? Right. So the other thing,
and in the UK, they've actually had Amazon actually had fake employees telling everybody how great it was to work there. Now, and it's like, it's like, do you really think that we're stupid? Do you really think that you can put out fake employees and we're not going to see through that? Come on.
Yeah. And to your point about using employees, I mean, the other thing that brands are actually scared to do is they're actually terrified of letting employees post on social media, which again is something I kind of understand, but so I'll just give you an example. I spoke to a senior VP of a global entertainment company a couple of months ago, and he told me, when I said all this to him, he told me, oh, no. I would never let loose any of my salespeople on social media. You know what I told him, Tim? I said, I think you've got a bigger problem than social media, mate. Right?
Absolutely. If I liken it to things like health and safety training. In the world today, we all know that we're going to be in a situation where we may have to get a ladder and put it up against a wall. Therefore, the people that do that, you are going to train them to do that, because if you don't train them, they're going to put it up wrong. The ladder's going to slip away, and there's going to be. So you go through a process of proactively saying, you need to wear a high-vis jacket. You need to wear goggles. You need to do all of these things. It's the same with diversity and inclusion. It's the same with sexual harassment. We had recently, there's people about whether you can have relationships within your organization and stuff like that. And a company will have a policy, but they will train people on it. And social media is now so prevalent with, was it 3.5 or billion people on it? Your employees are on social media. Now, you need to, right, that's the thing. Your employees are on social media. You now need to manage that. And the first thing you need to do is to train them on what good practice is.
Precisely. And I think companies don't seem to get it. They seem to, social media policy in every company.
They just, go away or go away.
Yeah. Don't do this. Don't do that. And my favorite, don't access your phones during office hours. Right. I mean, look, I'm not suggesting that you open the floodgates and you just get everybody on social media to say whatever the heck they want. No, that's not what I'm saying. But everyone is on social. Your employees are on social, right? When they're having lunch, they're browsing their phones. What do you think they're doing, right? So your choice as an organization is this: do you want to come out in front of it, or do you want to let social media lead your brand, right? You remember, your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room, right? So if you're serious about this, it means recognizing that you need to bring together those employees that can help. You need to train them. You need to give them the necessary, to your point, Tim, train them in language, train them in content creation, train them in cross-cultural awareness, train them in creative writing, train them to tell stories, train them on authenticity, give them the necessary resources to create videos and tell the stories that they want to tell. Don't shut them out, right? Just tell them to keep it simple and relatable and authentic. I mean, you'll be amazed with the feedback that you get.
But train them.
Exactly. Train them. I mean, don't ignore it. Don't say this is something we can afford to ignore, because you can't. Your customers aren't ignoring it. Your employees are not ignoring it.
So that's number one. What's number two?
Yeah. So number two is, once you've got a certain number of people that you've empowered, right, and connect and engage, right? That's the tip. That's the second tip. Connect and engage. The key, remember, is to humanize your presence. And this means, so when I say when I say, humanize, it just means simply being human, right? Rather than simply having human beings use technology, being human, right? It means you find opportunities for connection, for common ground, find an opportunity to serve, to provide value, use names, places, ideas, solve problems, provide information. Communication needs to be two ways, right? So encourage that repartee. It's not a platform for broadcasting and advertising your latest product. It means asking open questions. And again, coming back to the first point, it needs training. You need to train your employees to make conversation, right? In fact, I would even go so far as to say, train your employees to be transparent with challenges. I've had many situations in my past life as an airline executive when customers would complain, and I obviously I was on the phone and not on social media, right? But that's the thing, right? So when I say connect and engage, use social media to connect, and when you engage with them, take it off social media, right? But engage, bring that conversation make it more personal, right? Customers love it when you can tell them and you can give them an insight into the back office, back of the curtain, right? um, they love to understand what's going on behind the scenes, how difficult it is, how you're struggling to give them a better experience. When you do all of this, you're basically humanizing yourself, your brand, your operation, and people end up sympathizing, empathizing, and loving you for it, right? I've seen it happen myself.
I agree. So what's the third then, Vimal?
Cool. So once you've empowered people, you've connected and engaged, train your staff how to tell stories. I think this is a great tip for how you want to connect and engage, right? So everyone loves stories. The stories are basically how two strangers meet and become friends, right?
Yeah.
Stories are things that you pass from generation to generation, friends to family, individuals to communities, right? And the best part about social media is that stories that are fantastic actually go viral, right? So getting stories that go viral, creating stories that go viral, I mean, there's no science to that, but I think once stories go viral, right, there's good and bad. What you don't want is for customer negative stories to go viral. So you need to start creating internal stories. Forget about them going viral, right? That will happen organically, right? But you need to start creating stories because, as I said before, remember, brands are about stories. Brands are, your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. So what you want is for people to be saying nice things about you behind your back, right? Give your customers a chance to see themselves in your story, recognize themselves, their characteristics, their culture in your stories, right? KLM, actually, the Dutch airline, they do this fantastically well. They've been doing this for many years. They use social media for everything from customer care to even running R&D and innovation on social media. They handle about, when I checked, they did about 200,000 messages weekly.
Wow.
Right? And one of my favorite videos from them, where they told this story, right? It was all about lost and found. So they created, it was a real life video, as love to call it today, live action video, where they used the dog. They called the dog Sherlock, right? So you can already imagine what this is about. And they told a story around their lost and found service. And it took them only 100 seconds, Tim, 100 seconds, a short video that conveys just how brilliantly hard they work at finding the stuff that you've lost or left behind on the aircraft. And that dog has become a celebrity in its own right. And here's the best part, the dog isn't even real.
Right.
So that's kind of the third major tip. Use stories to convey how human your brand is.
So what's number 4?
Number 4 is something that is a little bit more practical. Move on from telling stories to actually listening to your customers and solving problems, right? So now on social media, it's very difficult to actually convey that you're listening, right? So you need to use the right language. You need to answer quickly. Don't take forever to respond to a tweet or to a comment. I recall a funny Twitter incident a few years ago when a very irate Twitter user actually paid good money to promote his tweet to an airline in Europe, a large famous one. And he got the response that the Twitter feed was open 9 a.m. to 5 p.m.
Right.
Can you imagine? An airline that operates 24/7 globally has a Twitter feed that's managed only 9 to 5, right? No. So what you need to do first is respond quickly, right? When you respond quickly, you're telling the customer, I'm listening to you, right? there was a survey done not very long ago. The average response time on Twitter for airlines in America was about 20 minutes, which is not bad, right?
Yeah.
And in Europe, the average was 1 hour 41 minutes.
Right.
So you can see that even across different geographies, there's different timelines, right? But after you respond quickly, it's equally important to show empathy, right? To commiserate. And this is where you need to get the conversation off social. Remember, I said that, get it off social, because you don't want to air your dirty linen in public. You don't want to have conversations in public for everyone to see. So get it on, get the person onto a call, a face-to-face meeting. And this is where you can actually start to offer solutions to the problem that the customer is telling you about, right? When you offer solutions, you're telling the customer that, look, I understand your frustration and I want to bring this to a satisfactory conclusion. It doesn't mean you have to give them everything they ask for, but it means, look, customers don't expect. I have my wife if I want to complain about something, right? So if I'm talking to you as a brand, it's because I want you to solve it. So give the solution, or at least try to give a solution, at least offer options, right? This is what customers want. And if you can't offer an option, at least say that you're going to try, right? So listen and solve. That's my fourth tip for using social media.
And what's number 5?
And so the last one is actually pretty logical. If you think about it, you've empowered people, you've trained them how to connect and engage. They're telling stories, they're creating human connections. You're listening to customers and so on. What do you do after all of that? What do you take with all of this, data effectively that you're gathering, right? You need to now bring it back in-house off social media and work on it, right? And when I say work on it, what I mean is, bring it back to the drawing board.
So it's a feedback loop.
Exactly, and get people across your teams, right? So cross-departmental teams, bring them together, look at all the feedback, look at the stories, look at what engaged, what didn't, what worked and what didn't. Look at all the problems that people are telling you about. Look at things that nobody tells you about in feedback forms and surveys, but people are telling you on social, right? Now put your team together to re-engineer and redesign the necessary parts of the customer journey, right? And start to integrate it across your silos, right? So value map your journeys, look at the problems, think of solutions, and then go back to social media and try to communicate the work that you're doing and the solutions that you're putting in place, right?
You can do videos on you trying to put the solutions together. And the
exactly. Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's absolutely nothing wrong with you coming out on social media to say, many of you have told us bags are taking a long time to appear on the carousels, right? We went back, we looked at it, we discovered that the main reason for this was X, right? We are now trying hard to resolve this, and these are the things that we put in place. And we hope that by next week, you'll find a 20% or 30% improvement in the timeliness of your bags coming on. A simple thing like that.
And thing is, Vimal, is that actually people will be scared to say, well, I don't do that because people will know that we have problems. Come on, every company has problems. But what you'll do is you'll crowdsource the resolution, because there's bound to be someone out there that will say, well, have you thought about this? Or have you thought about that? No, I haven't actually, because you'll get this independent third-party validation of what you're doing, and there's strength in taking it out to people. And let's take it out to the 3.5 billion people on social media. Let's not be scared about it, but let's see if they come up with solutions.
Yeah, exactly. And what you're doing right there is you're creating a virtuous cycle, right? So you're getting on social, you're engaging in all these conversations, you're telling stories, you're getting feedback, and then you're going back on social and telling people that, look, these are the things that you've told us, these are the things that we're working on. You're closing that loop. And what are you doing? You're creating these neural networks in your customers' brains, right, that are telling them that, look, this is a company that actually cares, right? They're listening, they are hearing me, they're going back, they're thinking about it, they're engineering solutions, and they're integrating them, and they're coming back to tell me about it. Obviously no customer is going to tell you this in the way I'm saying it right now, but this is effectively the loop that you're creating in the customer's brain. And the third thing is, we've got so many examples of companies outside of aviation that do this, right? You think of Trader Joe's, Warby Parker, Patagonia, Slack, even DHL, right? A lot of companies do this. Very few airlines seem to be able to do this. I just don't get it, you know.
And this is this experience culture, and this about getting in with the clients. This is about competitive advantage in 2020, isn't it?
Totally. I mean, imagine if you were able to do this, and you're able to tie it back to customers who say that, look, I choose to fly you because I know that even if things go wrong, you're gonna look at them and fix them. I mean, that is so powerful.
Yeah.
You know?
And people will fly with you because they were, when the bags come out and they come out quickly, that someone will go, I was part of that, I suggested that they did this, and people will go, yeah, don't bore us with that. But the fact is, the person will be flying with you because they were part of that crowdsourcing policy.
Absolutely. And actually that's what business passengers do. If you think about it, everything I just said is done by business passengers. Business passengers are typically loyal to an airline or an airport or a lounge or any other travel provider, simply because they know they get a higher level of service, and that service involves, some kind of recognition, some kind of involvement, some kind of priority put on the needs and wants that I have as a business traveler, right? And now you're just trying to use social media to effectively do that at scale.
So to summarize, it's about training the employees, empowering them, number two, getting them to tell stories, listen and to your customers and solve the problems. And then number five, which is to provide a feedback loop across teams to actually take what we've found on social and feedback that back into the business.
That's right. So effectively, social media should now be seen really as a tool to come out in front of everyone and tell the story that you want to be told, right? And not something that the customers are saying about you without you involved, right? So if you do all of these things in that way, I think you stand a pretty good chance of building a new type of sustainable competitive advantage in the travel industry.
Vimal, it's been fantastic talking to you today. It's been really insightful. Thank you for sharing your experience on travel with us. You've taken us, pardon the pun, but you've taken us on a great journey. Boo. And it's been amazing. I've really enjoyed it, and it's been really insightful. Thank you very much, and spending the time with us. I've certainly learned a lot, and I hope the people that have been tuned in have learned a lot as well. Thank you very much, Vimal, and I'll hopefully see you soon.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. I enjoyed it.
Thank you. Thanks, Vimal. Bye.
Bye.